previously testified, so please adhere to the same rules we gave you the first time around. And with that in mind, the state can commence with the direct examination when you're ready.
Thank you. Detective, I know you previously spelled your name, and I may have missed it. Did you just spell it again?
Yes. Last is Mattingly, Mattingly.
And again, I know you've testified before today, but I'm going to go over a few more things with you, or a few things that you may have already gone over, just to refresh the jury's recollection on some of it. Where are you currently employed?
Fremont County, Idaho.
How long have you been employed with them?
22 years.
What is your current title and or position?
Detective.
How long have you held that position?
About 6 years.
What other positions have you held within that agency?
I've worked as a detention deputy, patrol, a school resource officer, and then into a detective position.
And were you in fact working as a detective there on October 19th of 2019?
Yes, I was.
Did you receive a call regarding an unattended death?
I did.
And did you learn who the decedent was?
Tamara or Tammy Daybell.
Do you recall, and actually I'll back up there, do you know why you were called regarding that unattended death?
Yes. The Deputy Greenhall had been called out to an unattended death in our county, and as for our procedure, she's to call a detective to talk about the death and to see if a detective was needed.
And were you on shift that day?
I was not.
Were you the on-call detective?
I was not.
Did she tell you why she ended up reaching out to you?
She did. She did try.
I'll object, Your Honor, to hearsay.
I'll sustain that objection.
That's fine. Based on what she reported to you, did you end up responding out?
I did not.
Did she report that she found anything suspicious?
She did not report anything.
Do you know if other individuals responded out?
No other deputies, no.
Do you know if the coroner responded out?
The coroner did respond, yes.
At some point, did you learn of a prior incident that had been reported regarding Tammy Daybell?
I did. Deputy Greenhall, in her explanation of what was...
And I'll object, Your Honor, to hearsay.
I'll overrule at this point.
So Deputy Greenhall, in helping me understand the location and past circumstances, had told me about a prior event on October 9th, 2019, to where Deputy Cannon had responded out there for a suspicious call of, I believe it was a paintball gun that had been pointed at Tammy.
Had you been involved in that investigation involving the paintball gun?
No.
At some, actually, let me back up there. Do you know if additional investigation was conducted into the death of Tammy Daybell on October 19th?
No, there was no additional on that date.
At some point, was additional investigation started into the death of Tamara Daybell?
Yes, there was.
Do you know if the Fremont County Sheriff's Office was involved in that?
They were.
Did you personally become involved in that investigation?
I did.
Do you recall when you became involved?
Yeah, I started around mid-December of 2019.
Do you know if the Fremont County Sheriff's Office had already been involved at the time you personally became involved into that investigation?
Yes.
And had they been?
They had been.
Do you know approximately when Fremont County became involved in that investigation?
They started that investigation about the 1st of November.
I'm going to back up a little bit. Do you have any specialized training in order to be a peace officer?
I do.
And what is that?
So I attended the Post Academy or Police Academy, and from there I have my certificates of basic certificate, intermediate certificate, advanced certificate, and master's certificate. And then from there I also have specialized training as a detective and in death investigations.
When you became involved into the death investigation regarding Tammy Daybell, do you know if there were other related investigations being conducted?
There were several.
And do you know what those were?
Yes. Besides ours, there was Rexburg PD and the FBI were searching for Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow, the missing children. And in Arizona, there was Brandon Boudreaux's attempted shooting in Gilbert, Arizona, and Charles Vallow's death in Chandler, Arizona.
Would it be fair to say that this became a joint investigation?
Yes,
Did you also assist in the investigation involving the missing children?
I did.
And focusing on the investigation involving the death of Tammy Daybell, did you review statements that had been made by Chad Daybell regarding the circumstances surrounding the death of Tammy?
I did, yes.
Did you also review statements Chad Daybell had made regarding Tammy's health?
Yes,
Did you do any further investigation regarding looking into Tammy's health?
I did.
And what was that?
We got a search warrants for Seasons Medical, Teton Medical, and Walmart Pharmacy.
And Your Honor, I think previously the state had submitted the business record certifications for a couple different exhibits, but the exhibits themselves had not been admitted. They're admitted by stipulation, is my understanding. So I have State's Exhibit 38A, which is the Teton medical records, 39A, which is the Walmart pharmacy records, and 40A, which is the Seasons medical records, that I would ask to be, I believe they've maybe previously been admitted, but only the certificates were submitted to the court. So I would ask to submit those, and just to make the record clear, ask that they be admitted.
Okay. Let me inquire of the defense then on 38A, which is the Teton medical records, Teton Health.
Yes, Your Honor.
Was there a objection to the admission of 38A from the defense?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. Is 38 the certificate of authenticity?
I think it's the corresponding exhibit, and 38 was the certificate, and 38A would be the report itself. Is that right?
That is correct, Your Honor. It would be the medical records.
I've previously not objected to the certificates of authenticity under Rule 902 of the Idaho Rules of Evidence, and so if that attaches to that exhibit, then I don't have any objection.
Okay. So that's on 38A. On 39A, which would be the Walmart pharmacy records, I believe, being offered. Any objection on that, Mr. Archibald?
No, Your Honor.
And then on 40A, seasoned medical records, any objection there?
The same inquiry, just to make sure that the certificates have been previously admitted.
Okay. Before those are offered to the witness, then perhaps they could be shown to the defense to make sure they correspond to the
And Your Honor, at this juncture, the state does not intend to publish them to the jury. We just wanted to admit them. I will have some questions regarding them if the defense wants an opportunity to review them.
Okay. Would you like to review them, Mr. Archibald, or just move forward?
If the witness is going to be testifying about them, then yes, I'd like to see a copy.
Okay. Let's have them shown to the defense then, Ms. Blake. Thank you.
It's just a disc. Are they previously?
And I don't know, is the defense okay with me starting with some questions and then determining if you want to take a break to review those in more detail?
Yes.
Okay. We'll do that then. Since they're not being published, if there's some concern raised, I'll allow the defense to maintain a provisional objection there.
Thank you, Your Honor. And in looking at those medical records from an well, let me back up. Did you actually review those medical records?
I did.
In your review of those medical records from an investigative standpoint, did anything stand out to you?
No, nothing stood out as far as what we're looking to cooperate for information such as seizures or seizure-like activities, fainting, or dizzy spells.
Did you see anything in the medical records that indicated that Tammy had any issues with fainting?
She did not.
And I'll object, Your Honor. Foundation.
What's the foundation for that?
And Your Honor, I think I previously asked the witness if he looked at the medical records and just from his investigative standpoint, if anything stood out to him, and that goes to what he does next in his investigation. So I think the medical records speak for themselves, but this is his review of those and how it assisted or pushed his investigation along.
All right. The objection's overruled. You can continue, Ms. Blake.
Did you see any indication that Ms. Daybell had any dizziness or dizzy spells?
None.
Did you see any indication that she had any seizure-like activity?
She did not.
Did you notice anything with regard to her having low blood pressure?
There was no low blood pressure reported.
So from your review of this, did it corroborate statements made by Chad Daybell?
No, they were completely opposite.
And what, if anything else, did you do with regard to looking into Tammy Daybell's health?
From there, we had reviewed some pictures from the crime, from the scene of Tammy's death, and found that there was a Fitbit on her nightstand. And so we looked into getting a search warrant from Fitbit for information that Fitbit could possibly have, such as heart rate, sleep patterns, and her activity levels.
And did you end up actually obtaining documents from Fitbit?
I did, yes.
Did you personally review those responsive documents?
I did.
And from your review of those, what, if anything, did you discover?
So the Fitbit warrant, the information that came back, we were able to identify it as her account, Tammy Daybell's. And from there, even though we were hoping for heart rate and sleep patterns, because of the device that she had, those were not recorded. But what was recorded were her step counts and her level of activity.
And I'm going to ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 108A. These are just slides that are attached to a PowerPoint. I previously have given defense a copy. There's a copy for the court, a courtesy copy for Your Honor, and if the witness can be shown the other one. Detective, could you look at those pages? Did you assist in preparing an exhibit today in preparation for your testimony?
Yes.
Do those slides or those photos appear to be an accurate depiction of the information put into that PowerPoint?
Yes.
And would that aid in your testimony today?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of State's Exhibit 108A. I would indicate what the court has is just the printouts. The actual exhibit is on a jump drive.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 108A is admitted.
And I would request permission to publish.
You can publish it.
And Detective, does the information on the screen look familiar to you?
Yes.
And where have you seen that information before?
That would have came from our search warrant from Fitbit.
And with what we're seeing on here, were you able to identify or determine who the Fitbit belonged to?
I was. We used her email at tammy.daybell@gmail.com, her information that she had entered.
And did you look at other things to verify that this device was Tammy's?
I did. Another thing that we looked at was who her friends were that she had listed, and a few of them were her children, Leah, Emma, and Seth Daybell.
And you talked about wanting to look at the heart rate in relation to this information that was recovered. I believe you indicated you were unable to obtain that information. Do you know why?
As I understood, it was because of the device which she had. As you can see up there, it's the Alta device, right about there. And that's a low-end model which shows a heart rate as it's being used, but it does not record the heart rate.
And you also indicated that you were looking to see if she wore it to bed. Were you able to make any determination regarding that?
Yes. It looked like she very rarely wore that to bed at night. Every so often, it looked like maybe she fell asleep with it, but it didn't stay on.
And was there a reason that you were focused in or hoping that she had worn it to bed?
The reason we were looking for that was so that we can narrow down that time of death.
You said that you did discover some information on the Fitbit, though. What is this next slide showing some of the information you recovered?
It is, yes.
And what are we looking at on this?
So that's the total amount of steps per month that Tammy had taken for the year of 2019.
Did you do anything to determine if that was a significant amount of steps per month?
I did. Just because the numbers looked big to me didn't mean that they were accurate or how active they were. So after a review of what the national average was for steps, I was able to look at these numbers and determine whether she was below average or if she was average or above average.
And what was your determination ultimately?
So I found in the month of January and February she was a little bit below average, but from March up through October she was above average.
And to be clear on this slide, would that be January of 2019 that we're looking at the bottom?
That is correct, 2019.
So from the bottom to the top is the order it goes in.
Yes.
And again, what was the date, or the day, I should say, that Tammy was reported as deceased?
The report came in on the 20th.
And would the October data then be missing part of the month?
It would, yes.
So that would have been from the 1st of October up until the time of her passing?
Correct.
And was the death reported on the 19th of October?
Yes.
And that was of 2019?
2019, yes.
So from your review of this data, what did you determine with regard to how active Tammy was?
Tammy was very active up until the time of her death.
At any point in your review of this data, I think you said some of the first months start out a little lower. Did you see any slowdown in her activity in the months leading up to her death that seemed significant?
There was no slowdown.
I think you may have said, but did you also speak with coworkers, neighbors, and others regarding Tammy's health?
I did.
What, if anything, did you learn from speaking with, from interviewing other individuals?
I'll object, Your Honor. That question calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Through your investigation, did you find anything to support that Tammy was having health issues?
I did not.
Did you determine whether or not she was involved in clogging or other fitness classes?
I did, yes.
And was she?
She was. She was involved in Zumba, which is a high fitness class, a clogging class, and she had been preparing for a 5K, and which she did complete.
Do you know approximately when she would have completed the 5K?
It was just before school started.
In 2019?
In 2019, yeah.
And as part of the investigation surrounding Tammy's death, do you know if it was determined whether or not she had any life insurance policies?
She had two.
And did Fremont County Sheriff's Office do anything in relation to those policies?
Yes, we obtained 2 search warrants.
And did you do you know which companies she had life insurance through?
She had 2 life insurance. One was through Primerica, and the other was through LifeMap.
Were those the companies that the search warrants were sent to?
They were.
Did those companies in fact provide responsive documents?
They did.
And did you review those responsive documents?
I did.
And Your Honor, I have what's been marked as states 122A and 151. Again, these are documents in which there were business record certifications, and it's my understanding would be admitted by stipulation.
All right, 122A has been offered. Could you identify what those are specifically, Ms. Blake?
Yes, 122A is going to be the business record certification for Primerica and the corresponding documents. And 151 is going to be the LifeMap document.
All right, on 122A, does the defense have any objection to those being admitted?
If I could see the exhibits.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I also have it states Exhibit 152 and 153, which are attached to the life map documents. 152 would be the beneficiary statement. 153 would be the employer's and/or administrator's statement.
All right, we'll allow defense counsel to review these for a moment.
I have reviewed them, Your Honor. I don't have any objection.
Okay, so Exhibit 122A is admitted. Exhibit 151 is admitted. Exhibit 152 is admitted. Exhibit 153 is admitted.
And Detective, focusing in on first on the Primerica documents, did you in fact learn who the insured was on that policy?
Yes, on the Primerica, there were two insurers. It was Tamara Daybell and Chad Daybell.
And do you know who the beneficiaries were?
Beneficiaries were the same.
So each of them had a policy or were listed on the same policy as both insured and beneficiaries of each other?
Yes.
Were you able to determine from a review of those documents how much the policy on Tammy was for?
$300,000.
Do you know if that $300,000 was paid out?
It was
And who was it paid to?
Chad Daybell.
And with regard to the life map, were you able to determine who was insured under that policy?
That was Tamara Daybell.
And do you know who the beneficiary was?
Chad Daybell.
Were you able to determine an amount on that policy?
$80,000.
And do you know if that amount was in fact paid out?
Yes.
Do you know who it was paid to?
Chad Daybell.
And do you know on that life map policy if there was an additional $50,000?
Yes, there was.
And the total payout on that one would have been $130,000?
That would be correct, yes.
But the $80,000 was a little separate from the $50,000.
Yes.
I can have just one moment.
Yes.
I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Thank you. Mr. Archibald, cross-examination.
So, Detective, with your investigation into Tammy's death, did you learn that the defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, was in Hawaii at the time of Tammy Daybell's death?
I did.
And did you also learn that that Lori Vallow Daybell's device was not on the property of Chad Daybell on October 9th or on October 19th, 2019?
It was not.
Now, these medical records that you reviewed, do you recall what kind of medications Tammy Daybell was taking?
She was on tramadol and, pardon the pronunciation, but fluoxetine.
Do you know what those medications are for?
Tramadol, I believe, is for pain, to help treat pain, and the fluoxetine is for depression.
And In reviewing the medical records, were you able to determine what type of pain Tammy Daybell had?
I just know it was in reference to a pain in her wrist.
And in your investigation, you learned that she was taking medication for depression. Do you recall how long she had been taking that medication?
I don't remember the exact year or how long she had, but it had been for a few years.
And was it something that she had an active prescription for?
Yes, it was.
In reviewing the medical records, could you determine if she was also in any kind of counseling for depression?
No.
In reviewing this Fitbit information, it appears as if she was taking about 10,000 steps a day. Is that fair to say? Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Correct.
Okay. And then the 5K run, would that have maybe been in August of 2019? Because that was a high month.
It could have been. I don't know when it was specifically.
Now, in your investigation, you also learned that Tammy Daybell, what she did for a living. Is that right?
I did.
What did she do for a living?
She worked at the school, elementary school, as a librarian and something with computers.
And so, during your investigation, you learned that she was active at her job as a librarian or as a computer teacher.
I did.
Anything in her school personnel file, anything in there that would that stuck out to you?
There was nothing.
She was a good employee.
She was highly spoken of.
And on the insurance payouts to Chad Daybell, was this life insurance something that had been applied for years prior to 2019?
On which one?
Well, you tell me how long these insurance policies had been in place.
So the Primerica, that one they had established many years prior to even moving to Idaho. They had that when they were living in Springville.
And is that the 300,000 one?
That is the 300,000. Yes.
Okay. Go on.
And then Life Map, that was one provided by the school.
Okay.
And
That was the 80. I'm sorry. That was the 80,000 one.
80,000 plus the 50, so 130,000.
Okay. So the Primerica had initially started. That insurance had started in Utah.
Yes.
Before they moved to Idaho.
Correct.
And then the Life Map was just part of her job insurance.
It was.
So any activity on that insurance that had begun in, say, 2018 or 2019?
On the Life Map there was.
And what was that?
So she had previously worked there part-time, and then when she worked full-time, she was eligible for a certain max amount. And then after a year or more of working there, she was eligible for, I believe, 5 times the amount of her yearly salary, and that's where the price increased.
Okay. And 5 times the amount of her annual salary, would that have been the 50,000?
I'd have to review some notes. I don't know.
Did she make about 10,000 a year as a school librarian?
Close to that.
Okay. Any indication from your investigation that the life insurance company wanted their money back for fraud?
That was discussed.
Did they take any action to get their money back from Chad Daybell?
I don't recall if they did or not.
So not as far as you know.
I can't remember.
If that would have happened, you would have known about it.
More than likely, yes.
All right, thank you, Detective.
All right, thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any redirect?
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Yes. All right, Ms. Blake, before we get started again on any further redirect, we needed to, a little housekeeping matter for the record on exhibits. Exhibits 38A, 39A, and 40A were, you moved to admit them, you were going to question about them, and then you did. We never actually formally admitted those into the record. I didn't hear any objection come up from the defense during questioning, so unless there is an objection at this time, I'll just indicate on the record that exhibits 38A, 39A, and 40A were admitted, and those were the medical record information.
Correct, and the pharmacy.
Okay, so those are admitted. All right, with that in mind, Ms. Blake, if you want to continue with any redirect, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Mattingly, you were asked some questions regarding whether or not you knew if the insurance company was conducting an investigation or looking into fraud.
Yes.
And I believe you indicated you're not sure what the insurance company is doing at this juncture.
Correct.
Are you aware whether or not Mr. Daybell does in fact have charges pending for insurance fraud?
I can't recall if there is or not.
You don't recall if Fremont County, if he has pending charges in Fremont County for insurance fraud?
Correct.
Just 1 moment. And you indicated that to the best of your knowledge, the insurance companies did pay out.
Correct.
And those payments went to Chad Daybell?
They did.
Do you know, through your investigation, did you learn whether or not the defendant was living off the proceeds of of those insurance funds while in Hawaii with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And was he?
He was.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake.